Hey everyone, and welcome to another Planet Zoo tips and tricks video. Today we're going to look at 10 simple tricks that will help you improve your own building dramatically. These might be new to you, these might be known, but I hope that this range of 10 tips will really help you out a lot. So let's dive right into it and have a look what these 10 tips are. Alright, number one is world axis. So there is a thing in this game which is called the grid, and the grid is always relative to the world axis. The world axis is put simple, the main axis of your zoo. If I zoom out, this is the shape of your zoo, and the main axis is always perfectly to the center, kind of like a cross in the middle. But if you get lost in building, like I always do, and you're like not actually perfectly fine to the world axis anymore, building can become a pain. I'm gonna show you what I mean with that. So let's go into this building, use a simple plaster block over here, go here, and then let's say we want to make like a tower out of it. Now we are using the grid that is relative to this building, pretty much as you would expect it. You build this tower like this, and now you want to move this tower and kind of fill this wall over here. But now the problem is, if you want to do that, you can see your grid does this. It just kind of completely jumps over, and now it's actually going to be a little pain to put these things correctly. But there's a simple trick to avoid this. It's just using the world axis for your build. This is why I made myself this pinkish little grid thing over here. If I go to my blueprints, there is one, and this is the main grid, I called it, and whenever I put this down, it will be always perfectly to the center axis of your park. And now I put this down, I'm gonna go into this one, and I say the plaster rock again, just put that to the wall, put this in, and now we build the same tower like this. There you go. And if I do want to move this along, my grid is still gone, but I can now toggle from relative to the world axis. In this case, nothing changes because we already built on the world axis, but now you can move things perfectly fine on the correct axis, and you will actually never have an issue to build these things. Once you're done, you can obviously then rotate your building in any direction that you would like to. So that's the simplest way to make use of the world axis in order to just do things your way. Now let's move on to the next one. Next up is make usage of the grid. Now the grid in this game is also pretty dang good. If I go into this building over here, you can see I really don't have a grid piece in use, because I normally try to avoid grid pieces because you have more freedom without. But sometimes if you want to copy around things like that, and in my case this works just perfectly fine for whatever reason, but normally the grid might also be off like this, you know, and then it's very hard to build this thing the perfect way. Now also spacing is an issue, because sometimes you have the issue that it's kind of hard to always hit exactly the right point when things merge to each other. Now there is a simple way to abuse the grid pieces. What you can do, just move yourself into here and search yourself a grid piece. I like to actually use a normal little thing. For example, let's just use a flat concrete piece or whatever. Let's use that asphalt roof thing. Now what you can do is just move your piece actually to the exact same position of the ground piece. It makes also more sense to build on the grid directly, but I'm just going to show this real quick to you. So I'm just going to copy that over here, and now you can see this is exactly where I want it to be, because that's to the corner of my build. Now I'm just going to put this here, but then I'm moving it away because I don't want this thing to be interfering. And now you can select both pieces and merge them into a group like that. And now if I go in here and I copy the piece, it's always going to be perfectly spaced out, as you can see, like that. So you have a perfect kind of raster in which you can space these things out. They will always be on the exact axis, and if you want to just copy that, you can just go out and just copy that once and move that perfectly in the middle. And so you always have them perfectly arranged. You can also, if you are lazy enough, you can go in, lower down the grid size, and now you can actually do this with the perfect grid. And there you go. It's obviously a tiny bit off because I didn't do this accurately, but I think you get the idea. And so that's very simple to use actually the grid to your help. Next up is color groups, and actually this is something I just recently started to use because it requires a little bit of planning ahead, but believe me, if you do that, it will help you tremendously. Now, what do I mean with that? It's pretty much just grouping the pieces that can be recolored in the same way into one. Now, you can see this rock facade over here. It requires two different types of pieces. We do have the normal 4-rock and we have the 4-rock tree trunk pieces. And unfortunately, they do not belong in the same type of pieces, and hence they are recolored in a different way. But I made myself two groups. If I click here, this is the first one. You can see you can color edit them all the same way, and if I just make them black, you can see they are black. And if I click on the tree trunks over here, this is another group, and I can make them yellow, for example. And so it's way more easy for you to control the shape of what you want, because you can't recolor them together. I just left another group over here. As you can see, unfortunately, these pieces cannot be all recolored at the same time, and even if I go in and select all of them, I unfortunately can't, because this one has only one color option while the other one has two color options, and this is why you can't color them at the same time. This is actually something very helpful, because whenever you build at a certain time, it requires that you have slight adaptations to the colors you used, and so I always recommend doing that. Number 4 is unfortunately a tip that only works if you have the Europe DLC, but I highly recommend having this DLC because for builders it is almost necessary to have. But the tip is, or the trick is, use decals whenever you can. And honestly, decals not only work as something to make things look weathered, no, decals work also to use the terrain paint a lot better. As you can see over here, I use these decals to make the soil go slightly into the gravel path, because one thing that you don't want to have is a extremely straight kind of edge, because that is just not how things are in real life. You always have something growing over and stuff. Now it's super simple. If you go in here, go for decals, and I always recommend using, whoops, why can I not find them? Okay, because it's not plural. Okay, I'm stupid. And then I always recommend using the surface things, Decal Moss, because they are the best ones when it comes to grass and so. So you're going to use that one over here, and I always recommend to use the align to surface, and then you can also use the random rotation. These two work perfectly together. If I would have clicked this would make things easier, and then you just click your way alongside here. You don't need to be exactly crazy like I am. You can also make it the other way. You can use different ones as well. Just put that one close here, and then, you know, you get the idea. Once you've done that, you can use the third trick and the fourth trick together, group these things together, and then you have full control over the color. And now you can make this a bit more yellowish if you want, you know, just arrange that so until you have the color that the grass actually is. It just is a little bit more brighter, a bit more colorful like that, you know. And we can also just kind of try to alter this one, get a few more highlights in, and then you are almost like with the grass color. And if you put some things down and stuff, it looks so much better in no time. So I really, really recommend doing this. This goes also in line for rocks and everything else where you can put them below. So I didn't do that over here, but we could, just to show you real quick what I meant. You can also use other things. So for example, use this decal if you want to just have the rock idea going forward. So you're gonna put, oops, I shouldn't go into the building because I need to make myself a building. So like just put these things below here, like so. You can even mix them with other things as well, just like that. And then, you know, you have something like this. And then again, go ahead, group these things together that you need, or you just color edit them right away. Then just like go to this more colorful thing that goes together with your rocks, something like that. Do the same with the other stuff, just like so, and then recolor this one until you are happy with the color. So make sure it really fits to your rock color. There you go. And it looks a million times better because it just kind of blends in things so much better. So use decals to advantage. That's the tick. Number 5 is another obvious one, but I recognize that many people don't do this, and I also didn't do that enough. This is building groups. Building groups will always help you build a lot better and more efficient. Now, what do I mean with building groups? I'm just going to quickly show you. So let's cut. All right, this is now the result of me moving some pieces up from this building. Just going to redo things so you can see what happens and just undo them again. Now, what I did with this building is I made myself some building groups to make my life a lot more simple in terms of adjusting them. So I have this building, and everything I had in this building is separated into single building groups, but not just random groups. They all have a purpose. Now I have this gate over here I can just simply adjust. I have the cooling mechanism and the pipework. I do have the frame to the outside. I have the inner frame, and I also have, so for example, this enrichment item over here, this climbing piece, and all these pieces require me sometimes to build on them. And the good bit is I can just move them up and down. So once you move them up and down and bring them together, this is what happens. Now I'm going to show you something. Since this thing is done, I have deleted this, but in order to make your life a lot more simple, I'm going to show you a very nice trick, and this is the next step in our tutorial. So tip number 5 is use groups, but tip number 6 is way better than that, believe me. Okay, tip number 6 is use height markers. Now, height markers are something I just recently found using myself a lot more than in the past, because they are quite a little bit of work at the beginning, but oh my god, they just become the best thing ever. Now, what are these things? Well, height markers are just a simple way to get the right height from your building pieces. As I said in tip number 5, you can group pieces and group things into relevant groups in which you want to build. But once you move them up and down, it is always finicky to bring them back into the right position, because you have to zoom in and out and blah blah blah. Now with these things, you can just easily do that by just moving these things together like a hamburger, you know. I'm just going to undo all my moving here, and you can see these things are perfectly on top of each other. Now there's one more thing which is super simple. In order to just get the right building, you don't need to click inside of this and just search for them. I used myself a color coding for you to, to show it to you, but you can even use signs for that and name the things you want, because once you name them, it's way more easy for you to find the right building. So for example, you want to move the pipework, and I believe it's that one over here. So you can, this is the pipework. You could use, I even named this pipework. I forgot to name all the others. Oh no, I didn't. This is framework main build. This was the inner roof part, and that one over here is the climbing frame. So that makes things a lot more easy to adjust, because then you can just click on that, move it up for you in a space where you can easily adjust that, build pieces, blah blah blah, change pieces, change colors, and then just move it back down. That's the simple trick, because you can't use redo undo like I did, because if you go into the building now and you change a lot of things, undo would obviously just change what you did rather than the movement up and down. So this is tip number 6, and I found this one of the best tips that helped me become a lot more efficient in my buildings, even though if it takes a lot more time at the beginning, but I can only highly recommend to do this. Number 7 is super simple. Use ZooChat.com. I mean, that's the trick. That's the whole trick. But I mean, just do it. ZooChat.com is a great forum for zoo fans and everything around zoos in the real world. You can search for animal, you can search for zoos, you can search for habitat types, and you'll find a tremendous amount of insane photos, of insane descriptions. That is one of the main inspiration sources that I use to build my habitats. You can just search together, dump these pictures into different areas, and well, there you go. That's basically what you need to do. Number 8 is a pretty new one that we couldn't do in the past, but now it is here. For simple things and very detailed things, built in the Explore Mode camera, because now in the Explore Mode you can finally build, and the good bit about this is you don't move outside the frame, you don't have a weird movement or whatnot. You can just click that building and then just edit things from over here. You can even zoom in, and then you have the gizmo and you can just edit from over here. That makes your life a lot more easy when it comes to building in these areas. As you can see, making these builds and just moving these wonderful little post-its around environment was a pain in the past. But now, with being in the old Tejet Cam or the brand new Explore Cam, things are so much more simple. As you can see, look at how quickly I have done that, which would have been, well, this is something you should avoid. So always try to go into space where you can't just jump on top. But honestly, it's also not that much of a problem, because now with the new controls, you can just pretty easily drop yourself back down in here and then just build. I found this to be super helpful for interiors. So you can just go everywhere, change things really quickly without exiting this mode, because with Tejet Cam, whenever you click something and you moved into a building, you basically exited the building. And what is really helpful is it's so much more simple to fit and hit the right pieces, because you're not clicking on things that are in your way, because effectively with this camera, your point of view is actually the point of your camera. And in this case, you don't have anything behind you that you could accidentally click, and that makes things a lot more easy. If we go, for example, here to the outside, you can just edit your climbing frame right over here if you want. So that makes life a lot more easy with intricate builds and detailed builds. So make sure to use the Explore mode a lot more in building. I actually will have a building speed build in the future, which is solely from this camera, and I found this to be super relaxing because the camera movement is so much less. Really good. So build from this camera mode. Let's move on. Tip number 9 is, truth to be told, a very simple one, but I found this to be one of the most important ones. And it's just the sun position. The sun position in this game is relatively and absolutely important. Relatively, because if you start building on a wrong relation to the sun, it's gonna look terrible. And absolutely, because your build would look like rubbish if you are not in the right sun direction. We have the big issue in Planet Zoo that we have no control of the sun angle. So what you have to do is you have to change the time of day. As you can see over here, I always recommend to build around 1 p.m, maybe 12, like this. Midday is most likely the best color for whatever you want to do, but something between midday and 1 p.m. is the best area to have the sun. Make sure to find out what the sun position in your park is before you start building, because honestly, if, for example, I'm going to change this now to 9 o'clock, you can see how less you can tell from this habitat because of the weird sun position. And since the shading is very weird sometimes in this game, things don't look good, no matter how good you build and no matter how good you laid out things. So make sure to work yourself with the sun position, because that will help also improve your building, because you can just see things. Pretty simple, you can just see them. And don't get me wrong, this is very important, and it's a very important tip. Okay, the last one is a very personal one. Use blueprints. Now, I haven't done this for a way too long of a time. Blueprints are amazing for so many reasons. I'm gonna show you a few of them. Let's start with the most obvious. They will help you build a lot quicker, because you can use fence designs and stuff in an easy way to make yourself a bit of a, time-saving option in order to just have a normal frame for your building. It doesn't make you a worse builder if you use blueprints, because they have been built at one time. So if you're like me and you don't want to use things from other people, just use your own blueprints, change them slightly and alter the design. I mean, that's what Apple does for years, and they sell billions of iPhones, So don't feel bad doing that. This is just exactly what you should do, and this will help you also find out the perfect way. When you always use your own blueprints, you change them, you improve them, you change them, you improve them. You find out things about yourself when you use blueprints that you have done like half a year ago. You see how much you improved, because you see things that you have done differently in the past, and now you can judge that they were good or bad. Sometimes you even might move in a wrong direction, and once you use your own blueprint again, you see, oh wait, I've done that this way, that was way better, let's do it that way again. So make sure to use blueprints whenever you can. That's the first usage. The second usage is basically take blueprints apart. This building over here has been sent to me by the community for my summer lake a couple of years ago already, and I like to look at them, how people use things. So simple things like that is they just kind of use this window frame over here, and they used a couple of things, not just this one window. they use a couple of things together to make this window. Fun fact, I didn't even notice that this is a different window until I checked that the color of this main piece is a little bit different, and so I wondered, okay, what exactly is this piece? And then I just figured, oh, look at that, this is just many pieces, and so you get the idea how people do this. The same goes for this wall. This wall looked super nice, and I was like, hey, we don't really have that wooden wall in the game, have we? And so I just clicked in here and I saw, oh my god, see, this is not even a wall. And then I went down here and saw a couple of things that interested me. For example, the door wasn't the same and the sizes were all perfect and stuff. So you start to learn how other people use pieces. And again, if you're like me, you don't need to copy that, but you will always learn from this. The same goes for this piece over here. The slate roof prefab has been used in a very interesting way, just slightly tilted, making that look really nice indeed. And look at that, there's a height marker. And this is where I finally had the idea to use height markers back in the day. I think it was even this blueprint or maybe one of the range of these blueprints. So make sure to use blueprints to your favor. One day I made this one little mini van over here for my Jurassic Park what was that again? Diorama. And the good bit about this is also you can just use that to find small pieces. I always use this thing to remember myself what kind of small pieces we have in the game, because I obviously used a lot of small pieces, and this always gives me inspiration for other builds where I need thin pieces. So I'm just going to click in here and say, ah, look at that, I used this one, so why not using that again? So all in all, that's it. This is blueprints, and make sure to use blueprints. It's super important because they will improve your building so dramatically. I hope this helped you guys. Let's wrap it up. Alright, 10 little tips that help you improve your building were shown in this video, and effectively all these tips went into building these realistic habitats. I can only tell you some of them may seem ridiculously simple, but I found myself really forgetting about half of these constantly, all the time, and this is why I made the video, to remind myself and also hopefully you guys of simple tricks that will improve your building, and sometimes actually without even a lot of effort. Sun position, using blueprints, using the main grid. These are kind of little things like a checklist I now put next to my build whenever I start, because once you forget about these things, they will influence the whole build. So in terms of being efficient, you have to remember these things, and as I have to really, make sure that my time is used in an efficient way, I curated all of these tips now together in order to help myself and hopefully help you. If these tips were helpful, please consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. I am looking to make a lot of these videos more in the future. So if you have any concerns, any problems, anything where you would love to have like a tutorial or help or inspiration to, put it down in the comments and let me know what you want to know. That would be very helpful. And now I wish you a very good week, a good time, stay safe, and until the next time, goodbye.